fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello and welcome to the Salt Strong live stream. My name is Rich Natoli. I am one of the inshore fishing coaches employed by Salt Strong, and I am focused mainly on the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast USA. So really think Maryland and north along the coast. That's my territory. And as always, I am joined by the very lovely and talented Ed Gobo. Ed, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm doing great. We have hit that time of year where, we try to, we talked about this last year, and we got a couple of episodes in where we want to go a little bit off of the strict focus on here's how you catch this, right? Because you do striped bass, tog.
It gets old.
Maybe throw in some, we'll throw in white perch coming up soon, I hope.
Yes.
Other mid-Atlantic and Northeast species, but there's a whole lot more out there that we really do want to cover. And we did a little bit last year. And one of the things that we like to talk about is conservation and also kayak fishing. And specifically, that's what we're going to look at tonight. And it's going to be kayak fishing for beginners, which is a new nonprofit. And we're going to have the founder of this awesome nonprofit coming on in a moment, Adam Helm. And I do need to disclose, I am involved with this nonprofit. So I am one of the guys behind the scenes. It's really Adam. Adam's really the driving force behind everything, but helping him out with this. So just so everybody knows, I'm also involved in this. So it's a pretty important topic to me when we talk about safety, and Adam's taking it to a whole new level. So
yeah, I definitely agree. And with a lot of our viewers and a lot of us fishing out of kayaks, I think a lot of this is good refresher information, or even stuff that, we guys don't know. So can always help.
Yeah. Or, and you don't care about, but I
was that guy once.
Yes, you were that guy once. We'll talk about why it was once and not today.
Correct.
During this episode. But with that, I want to jump right in. So I'm going to welcome Adam Helm onto the stream. Adam, good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So for those that aren't aware, before this was on the Salt Strong channel, this live stream was going on about a year and a half on a different channel. And Adam is actually a returning guest. This is, I believe, your third time returning. So he was on, if you watched the old live streams or listened to the old podcasts on the other channel, you would remember him from the kayak safety live stream that we did first. And then we did one on how to choose a fishing kayak, which was one of my favorites. It was awesome, where Adam was on as an expert.
It was like a cage match, Rich.
I was hoping that the Hobie and Old Town guys like Adam would go at it, but they didn't. And then we had Hobie, Wilderness, and Old Town represented, and no fights. Unfortunately, they all had this habit of agreeing with each other. So I don't know how much drama we're going to have on this one, but Adam, I brought that up just to mention to everybody, you are an expert in the field of kayaking and kayak fishing, and wondered if you just kind of introduce yourself and go through some of your past experience and a little bit of your resume so people understand exactly who this is behind this new nonprofit. And then we'll talk about what the nonprofit is.
Cool. My name is Adam. I mean, I've been in the kayak industry for 13 plus years. I'm the general manager of Monterey Bay Kayaks here in Monterey, California. We're one of the largest program outfitters in the nation right now. We have over 400 kayaks, 2 locations. We do a lot of program tours, fishing tours, stuff like that. I've been a kayak fishing guide now for 10 years, and then a kayak instructor for 11 years, trained through the ACA and stuff like that. Kayaking's my life, both closed deck, sit inside kayaks, and sit on tops. This time of year, I spend most of my time in sit inside kayaks, playing around in the surf, rock gardening, teaching rolling classes, surf zone classes, stuff like that. And then when the season opens up here, I spend a lot of time fishing, usually 4 or 5 times a week, whether it's for myself or with other people. But yeah, I started out here 13 years ago as a kayak fishing, as just a kayak guide, just leading tours, taking people out, teaching them about otters, seals, sea lions. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. I've been fishing my whole life, mostly in the Central Valley of California, Colorado, moving back and forth. But yeah, kayaking's my life. Like I said, I'm a general manager here at Monterey Bay Kayaks, kayak fishing guide, the kayak fishing groups. I also in Sanctuary, which is a NOAA affiliate, as the advisory council. I'm on as the recreational fishing seat for the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary, which is one of the largest sanctuaries in the world right now. And one of the first. So we have a really unique protected habitat here, which makes fishing really, really awesome.
Man, and it's an entirely different area, different experience than fishing kayaks here on the East Coast. And I'm talking the entire East Coast, whether you're up in Maine or all the way down in Florida or across the Gulf and into Texas. When you talk about a swell, I just want to share this because everyone says, well, I don't go out if the swell's more than 3 feet. What's a normal swell that you'll go out in out there?
Average is like 3 to 5. But I fished 16 to 20. Mostly really long period swells. I know that you guys on the East Coast don't get really long period swells.
No.
If you look at the news, Santa Cruz, which is really close to us, got hit really hard with this last cyclone that we got. And that was a 16-foot swell, but it was a really weird direction, which just really hit that area really heavily. But we're also known for big wave surfing. We have Mavericks not too far away from us. We have Ghost Tree right around the corner. We have long period swells that are coming down from Alaska and stuff that, it still makes it fishable if you're comfortable in it, of course.
Yeah, I just think it's funny when they say, well, you can't go out if it's more than 3 feet. And it's really not a question of how high it is. It's the question of what the period is in between. Because if you have 6 feet and 12 seconds, it's not that big of a deal. But
right.
if you have 4 feet and 3 seconds, you better not be going out in that because you'll never be able to turn. You can go head into it and that's it. Wanted to bring that up just to give people, that's something I'm always impressed with. The pictures that I see of you and the people out there and, in the videos, especially, you see the kayak and the flag above you. And then the next thing you know, you don't see anything. It's just a clear horizon, and then they just pop up again. So I guess you have a little bit more concern out there with boats and avoiding the boats, especially when you're in the swell,
right?
Than we have here. Here, it's mainly people not paying attention.
Right.
That's what we have to deal with. Out there, you have that plus that big swell.
Yeah, big swell and cold water. It's 50 to 52 degrees year round up here in the water. So it's pretty brisk. We'll be lucky if it hits 60, but usually that's around wintertime. We get a lot of upwelling in the summertime and the spring where all that cold water is coming from the depths. So brings in the macrofauna like the whales and all that stuff. But yeah, no, the swell's kind of just part of life here. So we teach surf zone classes here, meaning how to get in and out of surf without, just completely dumping everything. I'm sure some of you guys know that kayaks really aren't great at surfing. They like to catch a wave and then dump you pretty quick. So, we teach those classes. I'm actually teaching an advanced 3-day class next week where we put them through some heavy stuff, usually 4 to 6 foot surf, dumping surf too. So it's not like a nice little rideable surfing wave. You're going through some pretty nasty stuff.
Well, when I get out there, hopefully this year, I'm going to see if I can twist your arm into taking me through one of those classes because I honestly can't find any here. Everything I've learned with surf launches is self-taught, and I know it's wrong. It just works most of the time.
As I say, we got to figure that one out, Rich.
Yeah. We can go out and practice all we want.
And some of you guys out there, you have a lot of different kayaks too. Not everyone has just one kayak. And some of the places I go, I can't take my pedal drive. The surf's too big for it. And, when you have that ability to have a different kayak for different situations, you really do rely on that pretty heavily.
Well, maybe that'll be a good topic for another time. But let's jump into kayak fishing for beginners. So, why don't you give just a description of what it's all about, what's the objective, and then let's jump into kind of the history and how it got started for you.
Kayak fishing for beginners started the very beginning of the pandemic. I was literally fishing 7 days a week, and then when I got home, I was bored too because I'm one of those people that just can't sit still. And I was like, scrolling through Facebook, seeing a lot of people get into a lot of trouble. The pandemic brought a lot of people out into the kayak fishing world because it was something that they're able to do by going outside. And then I just was kind of tired of seeing the headlines of people dying. Even here at work, I was listening to the radio, and Coast Guard was busy picking people up out in inflatable kayaks offshore, no life jackets on, just all sorts of some crazy stuff. So I decided to make this group to have a safe place for people to come and ask their questions without being attacked. I'm sure a lot of you know on social media, there's a lot of great groups out there, but there is also a lot of bad people out there that really like to attack people and make them feel stupid for asking what they think is a stupid question. But again, we were all beginners once. So there is no stupid question when it comes to safety. I'm a firm believer of that. I mean, it may seem stupid to some of these people that have been kayaking for 20, 30 years, but again, you were a beginner once and you had to learn somehow. So, I got Rich on board, a couple other kayak fishing guides that are on the West Coast here, a lot of experience through the moderators and stuff like that. And we created this group to have that safe place for people to ask these questions. And it really made a big difference. And then it kind of just blew up. It started small, and then next thing you know, we're at 55,000 members in 2.5 years. So it really exploded pretty quick. And it's still a good place. There is a lot of great questions, a lot of great answers on there. And now it's kind of self-moderating when it comes to the answers being put out there. It started out with, me, Rich, and a few others just giving that advice, but now everyone is starting to jump on that board of giving that good advice too, and really pushing that vision of safety and making sure that as most sponsors do, we do the same thing at Kayak Fishing for Beginners. We don't allow people to post pictures without life jackets on. I mean, that's bare minimum. And tournaments, derbies, anything kayak fishing related, their life jackets are required. So, find one that fits, find one that's comfortable, wear it. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I agree. And it's something that I guess I wouldn't be a part of all this if I didn't, but I wear a life jacket no matter how deep the water is, no matter how shallow the water is. I fish in Pamlico Sound behind the Outer Banks, and most of what I'm fishing, I have to keep the drive up and I have to paddle the pedal drive because it's less than 18 inches. And I still have the life jacket on because I won't go into a lot of details because I don't know how much I want to share about this one, but my daughter, her best friend, family member, died in very shallow water in New Jersey, fell out of the kayak and had a medical emergency and could not rescue himself. And he died. I mean, just a couple of feet of water, could have stood up, but he couldn't stand. And right. Now I'd been wearing the kayak for years, or wearing the life jacket or the PFD for years. I've been kayak fishing 25 plus years. So I didn't start out doing that. But as I got older and I realized that I didn't want my wife to have to identify my bloated body getting pulled out of the water, I started wearing it. So I just will always advocate for wearing a PFD when you're on the water.
That's one of my biggest arguments too, is, it's not necessarily about you. It's about the people you're leaving behind. When you could have easily just put on a life jacket, to me, it's a very selfish thing to think that other people, who cares? It's my body, it's my choice type of thing. When, it's you got to think about other people. And, I would hate to leave my family, my kid behind just because I refuse to wear a life jacket because I'm too cool, or I know what I'm doing and it's shallow water or whatever. We run into medical emergencies out here every once in a while. Boat strikes, like you guys get in lakes, and on the East Coast, we don't get too many of those over here, but strokes, I've ran across that. Just don't know. You have no idea what's going to happen in the water. You might as well be prepared for it.
Right. Well, and one of the things that happens a lot, even with people that I'm with, start getting a little lightheaded because you're getting dehydrated on those 100-degree days with, 75, 80% humidity, and you're out there for 6 hours. It gets to be a lot. No matter how much water you drink, the sun can really impact you and affect you pretty quickly. Ed, you get affected by the sun pretty quick, don't you?
Since I started wearing the UPF gear, not so much, but yeah, okay. if I'm not drinking water and staying hydrated, first I get like a wicked headache and then it goes downhill from there. So I definitely have kind of figured out my way to keep not getting into that,
Yeah. I bring way too much water every time. And every few weeks I have to go through my crate and empty out all the waters I didn't open because I just take extra. I take like 2 extra every time, and I end up with like 40 pounds of water sitting in the crate because I don't empty it out. But yeah, I mean, I even look at that as a safety issue. You know, make sure you have enough water, because if you need it, especially saltwater fishing, if you need water, you're not going to be able to find it. It's not there. So you make sure you have it, and you can need it for a lot of different things, including washing out wounds, which I tend to get a lot on my hands because I grab fish too close to the mouth. I get bit a lot. So yeah. So all right. So let's talk about the nonprofit. So what is the objective of Kayak Fishing for Beginners?
So Kayak Fishing for Beginners, like I said, it started out with the Facebook group, and then we saw a big need for it. And I started to see a need for people to get help with equipment, especially safety equipment. So we decided to create the nonprofit to help out veterans, children, and people with disabilities getting into the sport safely. So ideally, once we get some funding, we would like to send out packages to these people that apply that would, of course, include life jacket and things that most people don't even know about, such as, pumps. I know a lot of people that don't carry pumps with them. Paddle floats. If you don't know what a paddle float is, do a simple YouTube search of it. Whistles. I don't know. It's required here. I don't know if it's required on your side of the coast.
It is almost everywhere. Actually, I would say it's required everywhere. A signaling device is required everywhere. An audible signaling device everywhere that I've kayaked. Doesn't mean everywhere, but everywhere I've been.
Right. And tow ropes. And then, if depending on the funding, we could also help some of the, the kids out and stuff by getting them a little reel, maybe some basic tackle depending on their location. But we really wanted to just help out that community of people outside, get them outdoors, helps them stay healthy mentally and physically. It's an amazing sport that I think is very therapeutic. I'm sure a lot of you guys can agree with me. For everyone, it's not just, hey, people with disabilities need to get outside. No, I think it's therapeutic for everyone. It keeps me sane. I mean, fishing it's kind of, it's my life. I enjoy being out on the water. It really calms me down and everything. So I think helping out, those three groups of people is kind of essential. That, everything, life in general, teaches the kids a lot of stuff to, be out with their dad fishing. I mean, some of my fondest memories are, out fishing with my dad. So, the least we can do is make sure that they have the proper safety equipment, and also spread that awareness of safety beyond just handing out those packages. My overall goal, way down the line, it's not there yet, but is to kind of set up clinics throughout the U.S. for safety clinics for free, just for the general public to come down. I throw them a lot here in Monterey, but I mean, I'm hearing on, these social media groups that, oh, where can I learn to do this? And they charge a couple $100 type of thing. But I think it should be more or less free for people to learn how to, be safe in what they do. So, that's like an end all goal for me, is to, really promote safety and do some free classes around the U.S.
That's great. I can't wait to see the point where that starts happening, because it's definitely needed. And to your point, there are a lot of, pandemic kayak fishermen. They started during the pandemic. I know quite a few who used the stimulus money to buy their kayaks, and they were really excited when they were back ordered. And then they got their second stimulus, and now they could afford the pedal kayaks. So they were canceling orders and getting on the wait list for the pedal drives. But they went out there without a lot of experience. And I've been out on the water with people that were out for the first time. And it's not as intuitive as people think. If you've never kayaked in a sit-in, getting on a sit-on top may seem easier, but you don't have the basic skills that can help you from capsizing and especially recovering. Recovering once you're in the water is not easy. Ed, do you want to share with Adam so let me set this up. I have, Adam, you'll be happy about this. I have, since I met Ed a couple of years ago, been telling him, look, you should have this safety equipment, and you should learn to do this and learn to do that. And he always gave me the look of like, whatever, dude. It's good. Ed, do you want to tell him about the day that all changed?
It didn't all change. So before I met you years ago, I had a fishing kayak. Like,
yes,
this current generation of kayaks that I own it's not my first go around. And with the first one, I practiced self-rescue. I went out actually where we fished for perch a couple weeks ago. I go out in the river and dump off the side of it and practice getting myself back in and all that. But this last time we were fishing, I was relatively new to the big water. So I have a salty and I have a big water. So this is probably my second or third trip with the big water. And I ended up cutting across. Now I'd fished this spot, drifted off of it 4 or 5 times already, but I was resetting myself, trying to get the boat to turn. And the big water has a lot of primary stability, but not a lot of secondary stability. So as I was going back up, the bow got caught in a rip and the rudder got caught in a different rip going the opposite way. So it spun the boat and I wasn't expecting it. And when it started to spin, I felt the boat start to roll. So I bailed off before the whole thing flipped.
Smart move, by the way.
Did not have a paddle float, but I also had extra tough deck boots on, the ankle boots, which was a mistake because once you're in the water, those boots fill up with water and you can't bend your feet down to kick to keep yourself afloat. So they're almost pulling you down. So then Rich came over with, the paddle float, and it was a couple of seconds. I got right back in, and that was that. But without that paddle float, it would have been tough. I probably would have had to lose the boots, to hoist myself back into the kayak.
Yeah, and the full story is it was inshore. He could have just literally held onto the kayak, and eventually he would have drifted. I think it was about a quarter of a mile.
Even
with the current. With the current, well, the way the current was going, it was about a quarter of a mile before you'd be able to be in like knee deep water. You'd be able to touch well before that.
Yeah. We were in like 30 foot of water, I think. Yeah,
it was about 30 where you went over, and then the current would have gotten you out of it. But he did have the PFD on. But man, I'll tell you what, I told him when I saw him go over, just by chance. I was pretty far away, and all of a sudden he's not there. My first thought was medical emergency. He passed out because he's gone and I can't see him, and he's on the other side. Now he's up at the top holding on, but I couldn't see him. So man, talk about a fat guy pedaling fast. I was booking over there. Of course I did. Once I realized he was okay, I did snap a couple of pictures, send them to him and his wife so that she could enjoy him in the water. But so I mean, it happens to people. And Ed, I didn't mean to insinuate that you were a beginner kayak fisherman.
No, I didn't take it that way at all. But I think people should know the backstory that I am actually more experienced than most people would think.
Yeah,
and it still happens.
Exactly,
still happens.
Exactly.
I went over, Adam. I think I told you this in March, the Raritan Bay a few years ago. Kayak fishing for over 25 years. I could not remember a time that I unintentionally capsized at all. I know I had in the past, but I couldn't remember. It was that long ago. And I got caught in bad conditions, changing weather, with the swell following sea, with the secondary swell coming from about 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and the wind and the current in my face, and a very short period. So 13.2 foot kayak. It was burying the nose, and I got lifted in the rear, and it just stopped. As soon as the nose buries, you stop. And, my 250-pound plus body kept going. So I was in, but the whole thing went over when it happened to me. And I knew it was going to happen. But, I guess the lesson is, everybody, the safety, imagine, I guess the reason that I want to bring this up is you have a lot of experience between us. And Adam, I don't know if you've ever recently unintentionally capsized, but it doesn't matter how much experience you have, something can happen. And when it happens fast. Mm-hmm. So you have to be prepared. And imagine these beginners out there that don't know, you can get confident real quick when you're standing on these kayaks and you're walking around, which you can do. You're turning around, you're standing almost on one rail and on one gunnel, and you're not going over. That doesn't mean you're not going to be tipping a kayak at any time.
Well, and I mean, beyond just kayaking itself, I mean, you're adding another element, which is the fishing element. I mean, we do guided tours, year round here. When you take out even a few people on a fishing tour, the capsize rates go up a lot faster. Like for here onto the bottom, and they are still learning how to use drag. and their drag set too tight and they don't want to let go of that reel, it pulls them right in. And it doesn't take much. Like you said, you have that primary and secondary stability. A lot of kayaks are different, and you feel stable, but once you get it to that secondary, if you don't have a lot, you're in pretty quick. Kayak, the fishing element adds a whole nother element, and you tend not to be aware of a lot of your surroundings. Recently, a friend of mine, we were surf fishing. I like to fish in the surf on my kayak, so I'll pedal drive in the surf, casting into the surf. But you really have to be aware of the surf coming in, because you have these outer sets that come up, and you got to catch them quick. And he wasn't paying attention. He was fishing on the beach side. He wasn't fishing on the ocean side, so he could constantly be looking at the ocean. Small things like that you don't think of. And next thing you know, it picked him up. It was shallow, but he lost a rod, reel, broke some equipment. We laughed about it, but it sucks. You add another element, and when you get into fishing, like, you're really focused on that rod and that reel and the tip and everything, that you're not noticing your surroundings, such as boats coming your way, the swell, surf, whatever it may be. That's why we really stress that PFD, because you're not paying attention all the time when you're fishing. You're focused on something else.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, when I went over the PFD, I had it on. I also had a dry suit. The water was in the low 40s. So I had a dry suit on, obviously. And just a word to a lot of these dry suits aren't 100% dry. So if you go in, just expect that a little water is going to come in the zippers, and they're going to fill up your feet. Don't worry about that. That's not a big deal. But I'll tell you what happened when I went over. I knew it was going to happen, or it was very likely it was going to happen. And I had to work so hard to stay upright that I couldn't stop to reel in my lines. So I had 2 lines out trolling. And because I usually troll when I'm heading back in, and then the conditions changed and I couldn't stop. So when I went over, I had 2 30-pound braid lines wrapped all around me with the hooks on the bottom, and the reels hanging. And so the rods went over. So they're hanging below me, and my legs were kind of stuck together. But I had the PFD on, so it wasn't a big deal. So I also carry a knife inside the one pocket. I just pulled out the knife, and I was able to cut off the braid. Lost 2, nice rod and reel combos, but the PFD helped there. I could have swam. I was in condition that I could have swam. It would have been okay. But with that added on, I could not move my legs. You can't snap multiple loops of 30-pound braid around your legs. And I'm a pretty strong guy. I can pedal all day. I have, former soccer player. I still have those legs. And it was not good. It was not good. I lost a couple of combos there, and a camera, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But let's talk real quick. So the paddle float, Ed, you went out and bought one. Mm-hmm. If people don't have a paddle float, get one. It's, even if you don't need it,
$20. It's worth it.
$20, and it's so easy to get back in with. It literally makes your paddle into a ladder. Mm-hmm. It really, I say, idiot proofs the process. You should still practice, but it does make it a lot easier. What other safety devices do you recommend?
The pump. NRS makes a pump. A lot of other companies make just a basic pump. I haven't had to use it on my kayak, but I've had to use it while rescuing others that I've come across while out there. A hatch explodes, or they capsize and the hatch comes open, and then when they get it righted, there's just so much water in it, they're not moving fast. A pump's a big one. You never know what you're going to come across out there. I also carry a stirrup with me. A stirrup, if you guys don't know, it's just a rope that's tied to itself to make a big loop. In those cases where you do come across large people that can't get back into their kayak, that loop with the paddle float literally does turn into a step. And then when you put your feet on the step, all that weight is now distributed to the paddle float. So you could basically hands-free walk in. So even if you have like a shoulder injury or whatever, you can still get into a kayak without using much upper body strength. And it doubles as a tow rope. If you come across someone, you can turn around, just double loop it, and you tow them back. So stirrup's a big one. Of course, the signaling device, the paddle float.
I got a quick pro tip for you. The bungee cords on the back of the old towns also double as a tow rope.
Yeah,
ask him how he knows.
Been there, done that.
I mean, those are the big ones to me. In our area, wetsuits are given. Everyone's in a wetsuit around here. It's the way to go. I make all my guides carry easy cutters. I don't know if you've heard of those. They're pretty cool. A lot of the firefighters use them. They're really easy to cut wetsuit open if you have to do CPR. When I was a dive instructor, scuba, it was like a go-to piece of equipment. Has razor blades on the inside, but you can't cut yourself, but you can get through things quick, including some thick rope too. So I've had to rescue wildlife with that stuff. That's always a nice thing. Like you said, a knife, but open face knives. I do have a small kill knife that's pointed, but most of my knives, if I am kayaking, they're blunt tip. You don't want to also damage yourself. But I carry a little pocket knife for a kill knife, if I have to get it in the brain. But for the most part, I'm gilling them. So I don't really need a sharp knife to gill a fish. So those are kind of the key pieces. And then, of course, everyone creates their own first aid pack. And I really tell everyone that they should make their own based upon what they know about themselves. I'm not ashamed to admit it. My first aid pack has Pepto-Bismol in it. I hate to be a couple miles offshore and get that stomach pain, just pop some Pepto-Bismol. But Advil, water is key. Benadryl should be in everyone's pack, whether it's for you or for someone else. You don't know what you're allergic to all the time. Those small things could really make a big difference while you're out on the water, especially what a lot of people don't understand is they really rely on Coast Guard or rescue. They can nearshore rescue. They might be different on the East Coast, but most of ours, it takes them about 45 minutes to get out of the harbor. For the most part, they have to warm up the motors. They have to do a briefing. They have to make sure they know all that stuff. Fire department could get out usually quicker here than the Coast Guard, and that's still 15, 20 minutes. So depending on where you are, you need to at least be able to handle yourself for 15 to 20 minutes in the water, which is why we also advocate for radios. The marine radios are a must in our location. If you get an offshore wind, especially if you're, in the salt, offshore winds could be just devastating to you. Even if you're a strong paddler, I personally got scared once. I'm a strong paddler. Forecast said, light 10 to 15 winds. And it picked up to 35, 40 really quick all of a sudden. Offshore wasn't in the forecast and I just went straight toward shore, but I was struggling to where I was able to at least call the shop and say, hey, just make sure you guys get the rib on standby. I might need it. We have a rib here at the shop that we take out for rescues every once in a while, but I didn't end up needing it, but it's at least nice to have that lifeline. And then of course a cell phone. Cell phones are great only if you have a dry bag. If you get them wet, they're not that great. So there's so many companies of dry bags out there, and most of them you could use them through the dry bag, including pictures. So that's another good thing. And it's always good to have a float plan. If you don't know what a float plan is, it's basically pretty simple. Tell someone where you're going and tell them your plans, and then just try to stick within those plans instead of being like, oh, I see some fishermen, a couple miles away in an area that I'm never really go. Try to stick to your float plan, or at least call someone and tell them where you're going. Just recently here, it wasn't a kayak, but a boat. They found a boat adrift. No one in it. The guy's still missing. Who knows what happened to him? But a big issue with that was, there wasn't really a float plan. They didn't know where he was, where that boat came from. Who knows how long it had been, floating around out there. So it's always important to let someone know where you're going.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I tend to. I need to do better on the float plan. I tell my wife where I'm launching, what time I expect to be back, and it's pretty much. I think that
one got me in trouble. My wife stopped asking for a time I'm going to be back, because when you're fishing, you don't always know when you're going to come back, and then she would start worrying when I didn't come back at that time. But little did she know I was just catching some more halibut. So it's
right.
The timing's not always a big thing as long as you're back before it gets dark.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Coast Guard doesn't like when we're out in kayaks in certain areas and where we typically fish. A couple of them actually thought it was illegal.
Oh, wow.
It's like, I got a light, man. He's like, get off the water. We're like, all right, we're leaving anyway.
Well within your rights, though.
Yeah, well within our rights. Yeah, up here, I'll use New Jersey as an example. Where I fish mostly, you have Cape May, Coast Guard, it's very quick for them to get out. It's very quick for Atlantic City when they have folks up there. Up north, I think it might take a little bit longer. I'm not quite sure where the northern Coast Guard is, but to your point,
we went by.
It doesn't matter if. What's that?
We went by it on Saturday. Right in the canal.
Did we?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. All right. So I wasn't. So Shark River.
Shark River.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't paying attention. I was a little tired.
It was a long day.
But to that point, even if you capsize off of Cape May, you're still going to wait a while. And so it's usually your best bet here, especially in the summers, is other boaters, which you need that radio for. Typically, other boaters will come help you very quickly. I will say, Adam, when I capsized in Raritan Bay, it was next to a boat. They looked at me, reeled in, and left. They left me in the water. So you can't bet your life on it. Now, when I went over, though, I wasn't very concerned because I knew how to self-rescue. I just practiced a few months earlier. I think it was September was the last time. So I knew I could get back in. I had the life jacket on, the dry suit. I had the radio strapped to me. So I felt pretty good. Plus, even though I was about 1.5 miles from the beach, it was 8 feet of water. So that made me feel even a little bit better. Even though it's too deep to live, I still felt better. But yeah, you're going to be in the water though for a while if you can't get out on your own. Mm-hmm. And if you lose contact with that kayak in bad weather, you may never get it back. So I actually recommend to people when you go over, the first thing you should do is grab that kayak and then just wait a second, take some deep breaths, get yourself settled, because if you lose that kayak, then you are floating on your own. Right. And that's where the life jacket really comes in. See, we had a couple of comments in here. Let's bring up this one from James Flynn. What's the contact info for donations? So you want to share the website?
Yeah, you can go directly to our website, kayakfishingforbeginners.org or .com, and it goes to the same place. There's a donation page on there that you could donate directly to. We also have a Facebook page, Kayak Fishing for Beginners group, but we also have a Kayak Fishing for Beginners business page too, that there is a link on there to donate as well.
Awesome. And here's one, we have to put the questions in here, Adam, even if they're not necessarily about kayak fishing for beginners. So Nick Devereaux has a question. You were talking about those swells that you have out there in California. What's the minimum length and width of a kayak you would take out in those types of swells?
That's a hard question. It depends on what you're comfortable in. Every kayak's completely built different. The smallest I was out in them, I had a Topwater 106 that I would take them out in. I was in that Topwater 106 fishing for salmon once out of Half Moon Bay, and I was watching the Mavericks people surf at the same day. Yeah. And I think I have a video on my Instagram of a wave coming over the bow and almost knocking me out of the kayak. So again, it's not necessarily length. It's about how comfortable you are in your kayak. The lower you sit, the more stable you are and all that fun stuff. But typically my pedal drive's 12 foot, but my sit and sides are, usually around 15 to 16 feet.
I can't believe you're out there in the 106 though.
That thing's stable. The waves aren't breaking unless there's heavy winds, but if there's heavy winds, I'm not out there. So, up and down. So, it's not anything detrimental. I haven't taken out the 106 in a long time, but it really just depends on how comfortable you are in your kayak. Okay.
Let me ask you this. Salty or the big water when you're going offshore? Ed, I think you're going to like this answer.
I'm a very small person. I'm only 160 pounds, 5'7". The big water's a big kayak for me, and it's kind of a tugboat. I like it, but I would prefer the salty. The salty is going to get me to shore faster. It's going to has a lot more rocker, which is the banana shape of the kayak. So it handles the chop a lot better. Instead of I noticed the Sportsman and the big water, you'll get waves coming over the bow pretty easily on those. So if I'm in some bigger water, I'll be in the salty, but just all depends.
I love when the water's coming over. We're going through that chop. We're not going over. We're not popping up and down. We're just going through. It's straight out the scuppers.
Until you get into the surf zones, it just floods everything in your kayak, and then you become a lot less stable too. So
I had that happen. I had that happen. I got waked by a big boat, and this was in the backwaters. There was no swell. There was zero. Way in the backwaters, and a big boat came by, and it was like Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack, because you're just driving that big yacht around, and he just came by, and the wave was so big, it crashed over top of this, and it came broadside, and it literally filled up the entire big water. I had gulp packages float out of it. Now it drained within seconds. I was actually amazed, and I was even more amazed that I didn't capsize. But yeah, it was it was not good, and you definitely get very tippy once you get a lot of water in there. Thank God it wasn't down in the hull.
Yeah, if it's really rough conditions, I actually prefer paddle kayaks. I could rely a lot heavier bracing, low brace, high brace, all that. A paddle kayak is my go-to if it's really rough conditions. I'm just so much more stable.
I definitely agree. I used to love the paddle kayaks. I vowed that I would never get a pedal when they came out. Then I got old. Yeah. Then I got old and realized it's so much better. But
trolling, everything.
Yeah, but you know what? You brought up a good point there about the low brace and everything. If you've never used a paddle kayak, you don't know that. You know, that actually would have saved me had I had the paddle in my hands when I was capsized. I could have done that, and I wouldn't have capsized. Well,
right.
Maybe, but I would have had a very, very good chance of not capsizing had I done that. And that's the thing. I knew, and I still didn't do it. I had to keep my left hand on that rudder, but yeah. What were you gonna say, Ed?
Stuff like that happens, and it happens so fast. You wouldn't have thought to grab that thing in time. You know what I mean?
Well,
you're blaming
usually
yourself.
For me, I knew it was going to happen though, and I still didn't do it. But I don't know how I could have, honestly, because
so
I had to hold that rudder.
Like with me, with going over, that happened so fast. I had enough time to think to jump off the thing before it rolled. Like that was it. So you don't.
That's more than I thought
yourself.
When I went over. I just thought this is going to be cold, and I went in face first.
So I wasn't too worried about that because it wasn't. What was it? 60-degree water temps. The air temp was a little chilly, but it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it would. You didn't have dangerous water temperatures or conditions for yours.
Yeah, we have a saying over here. It's like I'm a kayaker first and a fisherman second when I'm out kayak fishing. I mean, I've been fishing my whole life, but I learned kayaking before I even took a rod out with me. And then I started out one rod at a time, and then you start adding equipment and taking, you fine tune it to what you need to take out with you. I used to call them the same thing in the scuba diving world when I was working in it is, the Christmas tree kayaks or the Christmas tree diver. They have so much equipment on, they look like a Christmas tree, and they're only using, I don't know, a quarter of what they take out.
Yeah.
And you'll be out there with all this fancy equipment, and a guy out there with, one rod and reel and his little beater kayak is catching more fish than you. So, I mean, all that equipment, thin it down. You don't need that much stuff. Get to the basics. I mean, you're rarely going to switch out that many lures if you really think you're going to take out 80 lures and use them all. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I will say we do have a Salt Strong coach, Matt Lanier, Matt in the Yak. His phrase is Matt in the Yak with 8 rods in the back, and he has 8 rods. He actually uses them all. However, I will say this: Matt is an extremely experienced kayak fisherman, and he's got his stuff loaded up the right way, and he's also not going offshore or anything like that. So he's not in those those conditions. He's in the Florida Panhandle backwaters. But yeah, to that point, I always love when people load up the boats before they take them out.
We have
I got this now
on both ends of that spectrum.
What's that?
I said we have friends on both ends of that spectrum.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I use the cheapest stuff I can get away with because I know I could lose it, and I don't want to cry when I lose a rod overboard.
And I'm the minimalist. 3. I bring the least amount of crap that I have to bring.
Yep. Same.
Yeah, me too. One tackle tray. Most of my stuff is actually safety equipment and waters because, again, like I said, I never take the waters out of the crate. I got to do that because it gets a little heavy. But otherwise, I don't carry much at all. You know, if we go out and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, let's troll," and like, I don't have any trolling stuff. let's switch over to striped bass. And I'm not out for striped bass today.
How many rods do you guys usually take out?
I bring 3. I bring my primary. Now, on a good day, on a right day, let's say it's a single species day, I'll bring 3. I'll use a primary, it's all set up. And if it's a great day, I never switch. And then I have a secondary that's rigged identically. And then I have the third one is going to have my second choice of lure types. So, that's the emergency rod. If I do multiple species, like I'll go out for striped bass and tog in the fall or in the spring. 2 totally different fish. One's bottom fishing, one's, working marshes and things like that. I'll have 2 different setups for striped bass, and then I'll have the same setup duplicated for the tog. So I don't have to, if I lose a rig, which happens all the time, Ed's happy because I lose one of his jigs and I have to buy more. Then I just grab the other rod and I go. But that's it. That's the only reason that I'm doing it. Ed, you bring less than me.
So it depends. I have in my garage, I have it all set up with tackle trays as to what species. So it depends on what we're targeting. So I'll bring 1 or 2 tackle trays. And it's mostly bags of soft plastics. And then as far as rods, I only bring maybe 2. I think at most I've ever brought was 3. Yeah. And then a net. So...
Yeah, I'm more on 3. I prefer to bring 3 at this point because I like to put the net in the other holder that I have. So.
Well, I like expensive rods and reels, so I try to only bring 2. So if I do lose them, I'm not losing all of them.
Yeah, good idea. Adam, how many are you taking out?
I take 4. We have a lot of different species here, so if you're getting skunked on one, you could easily just switch over to something else. And we troll a lot here as well. And then on top of that, I always have a sabiki rod. If you guys have ever go bait fishing with a sabiki line, you want a sabiki rod so you're not getting tangled up in all those hooks.
Yeah, I'm really good at tangling those hooks around my rudder. Ed's made fun of me in tournaments with sabiki rigs all over the place.
I think I had to cut the sabiki out of your rudder, didn't I?
I don't think you had to, but I think you just did to be nice. Yeah, I think it was annoying you that it was stuck all over the rudder. So, all right. So Adam, I want to thank you for coming on. Is there any last thing you want to share with anyone? Do you want to go through the contact information again?
Yeah. Check us out, kayakfishingforbeginners.com or .org. Again, we have Facebook group as well. You can check that out as well. It's all a work in progress. The website's still kind of minimal, but we're still working on that. But yeah, you could donate there. We really do need to get funds to get things going. We have a big dream, but we got to start somewhere. And we just became live a couple days ago, so it's still really fresh. So the sooner we could get some funding, then definitely we could get out there and start helping people out.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you guys want to help kayakers get on the water, kids, veterans, people with disabilities, this is the place to go. Money's going to go towards safety equipment for them, help them to get out on the water, get productive. And the Facebook group is a good group to go to. It is heavily moderated, and you get the people in there that want to talk down to other people. They get mad at you if you keep a fish that's legal. Those people are very quickly removed. So it's a pretty good place to go in and ask questions. And anybody that ever says it's a stupid question or makes fun of it, they're what we call blocked ex-members that can't come back. So with 55,000 people in there, really, it as Adam mentioned, it has become pretty self-policing, and the members will police it for everybody. And they will very quickly say, that's not how we do it here. And the people usually come in line. They say, you know what? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that.
And we appreciate them. We appreciate them.
Yeah. It's nice. So, all right. Well, thank you, Adam, for coming on.
Hey,
thank you, everybody, for checking this out. It'll be out on the podcast in a couple of weeks. If you want to check it out there, please share it out to everybody. We'll be back next week, and we're hoping that we can talk a little bit about another species of fish, the white perch, which is, I don't know if you have them out there, Adam, but we have a lot of our fisheries kind of shut down for now in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, or they're going to pure catch and release. So this is one of those species that can help get us through the winter months and keep us fishing year round. So we're going to talk about that next week. So until then, everybody, make sure you get out there, get on the water, and get some tight lines.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.